Welcome people, this is UPSC Connect. So, under the course of ancient history, we will be learning about the post-Mauryas. आइए शुरुआत करते हैं पोस्ट मौर्यन पीरियड की और इसमें हम पढ़ेंगे द एज ऑफ सुंगास एंड द सतवाहन्स। बेसिकली इनके आसपास से सारी कहानी घूमेगी। तो चलिए स्टार्ट करते हैं। इन द ईस्टर्न इंडिया, सेंट्रल इंडिया एंड द डेक्कन, the Mauryans were succeeded by a number of native rulers such as Sungas and Satvahans. In the northwest India, they were succeeded by the number of ruling dynasties from Central Asia. तो इन दोनों को समझेंगे, इन दोनों के बारे में पढ़ेंगे। आइए शुरू। The Sunga Dynasty. It was between 185 BC to 75 BC. The founder of the Sunga Dynasty was 𝗤𝗂𝗖𝗄𝗧𝗪. He was commander-in-chief of 𝗤𝗂𝗄𝗧𝗪, the last modern king. According to Puranas, 𝗤𝗂𝗖𝗄𝗧𝗪 ruled for 36 years and his reign ended in 148 BC. 𝗤𝗂𝗖𝗄𝗧𝗪 was succeeded by his son 𝗤𝗂𝗏𝗔𝗄𝗏. The 𝗤𝗂𝗏𝗔𝗏 was the governor of Vidisha during his father's regime. He ruled for 8 years and was succeeded by the 𝗤𝗍𝗏. The next important king of this dynasty was 𝗏𝗏𝗄𝗏, who was the son of 𝗤𝗏𝗏𝗔𝗏. The last king of the dynasty was 𝗙𝗵𝗶𝗘 or 𝗙𝗵𝗎𝗍𝗏. He was an incapable and loving ruler. He was put to death by the minister called 𝗏𝗏𝗹𝗃𝗏. Thus, the kingdom of Magadha passed from Singas to Kanwas. The Sunga dynasty's greatest achievement was the safeguarding the India from the invasion of Hun. They valiantly resisted the Huna's attack and saved India from being destroyed. They contributed a lot to the development of culture also. The Sungas link greatly encouraged the Brahmins, religion and the literature, along with art, education, philosophy and other form of learning flowered during this period. The Patanjali's Yoga Sutra and Mahabhashya were composed in this period. Panini composed the first Sanskrit grammarian 𝗪𝗏𝗍𝗪 during the reign of the Sunga dynasty. Art history also progressed while the rise of the Mathura school. 𝗙𝗵𝗶𝗘 was the last ruler of this dynasty. The script used by the Sunga dynasty was a variant of Brahmi and was used to write the Sanskrit language. The Sunga Empire played an imperative role in patronizing the Indian culture at the time when some of the most important developments in Hindu thoughts were taking place. Now, let's learn about the Kanwa dynasty. The Kanwa was a Brahmin dynasty founded by the 𝗏𝗏𝗹𝗃𝗏, the minister of 𝗙𝗵𝗶𝗘 and the last Sunga king in 75 BC. The period is said to have witnessed the rule of 4 kings, extending about a period of 45 years. The Kanwa ruler allowed the kings of Sunga dynasty to continue to rule in obscurity in a corner of their former dominions. The extent of Kanwa territory was confined to the areas of Sunga rule. Sursaraman was the last ruler of the Kanwa dynasty. In the year 30 BC, the southern powers swept away the Kanwas and Sungas, and the province of eastern Malwa was absorbed within the dominions of Satvahans. The 𝗤𝗂𝗄𝗏 inscription of near Bhubaneswar, Odisha, of 𝗏𝗂𝗏, the third ruler of the dynasty, gives information about the Chetis. 𝗏𝗏𝗏 is said to have defied the Satvahana rulers, Satkarni, and become free of Magadha Empire. He pushed his southern conquest beyond the Godavari. 𝗏𝗏𝗏 was the follower of Jainism and patronized Jain monks, for whom he constructed in the caves in the Udayagiri also. Now let us talk about the Satvahans or the Andhras. After the fall of Mauryan Empire, the history of Andhras as a continuous account of political and the cultural events commences with the rise of Satvahans as a political power. Satvahans were also called as Salivahan or Satkarnis. According to Matsya Purana, there were 29 rulers of this dynasty. They ruled over Andhra Desha, including Deccan, for about 400 years from 2nd century BC to beyond 2nd century AD. In the 3rd century BC, Simukha, the founder of Satvahan dynasty, unified the various Andhra principalities into one kingdom and became its ruler. His reign was confined between 271 BC to 248 BC. Dharanikota, near Amravati in Guntur district, was the first capital of Simukha, but later shifted his capital to Pratishthan, the Patan in the Aurangabad district. Satkani II, the sixth ruler of the dynasty around 184 BC, was an able ruler who extended his kingdom to the west by conquering the Malwa. According to inscriptional evidence, he extended the boundaries of his realm far into the central of India across the Vindhyas, perhaps up to the rivers of Ganges. He ruled for about 56 years. The long reign of Satkarni II was followed by successively 8 rulers, of whom none can be credited with any notable achievement. It was the accession of Pulwami I that brought renewed strength and the glory to their kingdom. He struck down the Kanwa rulers, Susaraman, in 28 BC and occupied Magadha as well. The Satwan thus assumed an all-India significance as imperial ruler in succession to the Nandas, Mauryas, Sungas and Kanwas. Buddhism flourished throughout the period and at the same time the rulers were devoted to the Vedic ritualism. They constructed various Buddhist stupas, chaityas, vihars. The stupas at Amravati is known for its architecture and power excellence. Satvans were not only the able rulers but also the lovers of literacy and architecture. Now we'll talk about the Central Asian contacts. The first is Indo-Greeks. The first Indo-Greek kingdom appeared in 190 BC, when the Greco-Bactrian king Demetrius was busy in India when his Indian possessions were divided between the several kings, probably firstly in the order to better govern them, but then due to civil war. The term Indo-Greek is generally used because these kingdoms were almost always separated from Bactria and thus differed politically from the Greco-Bactrian kingdom. These kingdoms, in which there were already some Greek settlers called Ionas, took more and more Indian characteristics, becoming truly unique political entities with mix of Greek and Indian culture, at least for the ruling elites. The Indo-Greek kingdom's timeline is very approximate, between 190 BC and 165 BC. Greek possessions in India were divided into several 𝗤𝗖𝗵𝗔 kings who fought among themselves and their Greco-Bactrian neighbors. These kingdoms extended to the western Punjab and had Indians of Singa Dynasty as their neighbors. In the year 165 BC, the Greco-Bactrian rebel invades the Indo-Greek kingdom and defeating the Antiochus II succeeded to take control of the most of the Greek possessions. Unluckily for him, Menander, the last 𝗤𝗖𝗵 enemy, pushed him back to the Bactria in the year 155 BC. Thus, the Indo-Greek kingdoms were safely under 𝗤𝗖𝗵 rules for next 25 years. In this time, Menander extended the Greek rule as far as Patliputra, but fell in a civil war. However, in the year 130, the 𝗤𝗖𝗵 king were chased by the Bactria by the Yunzai and settled down in the strength in Indo-Greek territories. From 130 BC to 80 BC, numerous Indo-Greek kings ruled in India, often in the little kingdoms, fighting among each other, while Arcadia was lost to the Sakas. Some kings seem to have nearly succeeded in to reunite these areas, like 𝗤𝗖𝗵𝗔, Phelonics, Dimoids, but finally failed. The deceptive element came in 80 BC when the Saka king Maus attacked the Indo-Greek kingdoms. He won against several Edomite and Eratosthenes kings, taking the Pamphromazite, Gandhara and the western Punjab. Now let's learn about the Sakas. The Indo-Scythian Sakas were nomadic Central Asian tribes which inhabited the region around the river Xaxaris and the lake 𝗎𝗎𝗔. They seems to have been Indo-European in terms of ancestry, part of large group of people who had formerly lived around the north shore of the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. Migration between the 4th and the 2nd millennia BC sent them far and wide, mostly into Europe and the eastern Mediterranean, but it also later saw them in Iran and India, and even Han Dynasty of China. The Sakas eventually found themselves situated to the north and the east of Indo-European Oxus civilization of the late 3rd millennium BC, taxonomia. Although it is impossible to say whether they were involved at all. They could instead have been a part of Kazakhstan's steppe-living spiral city builder who may have traded with the Oxus dwellers but who did not achieve quite the same level of sophistication. It probably involved in a return typical Indo-European nomadic existence, which is supported by the adventures with the 𝗤𝗂𝗍, 𝗂𝗍𝗄𝗍, and others. They may have influenced or provided elements of later Gautreks who have been linked by some scholars with Indo-European ancestry. The Amerindian subsets of Sakas in particular were fairly well attested after coming into the contact with both Achaemenians and the Greek under the Alexander. They were apparently centered on Amerindian plain which equates the Phaganaint, also the Ally Valley, well to the east of the most of the Sakas. They accompanied Alexander in his campaign, undergo their king Omagh, and later entered into India along with the Kambodjas to found the kingdom of Gandhara, is present day in North Pakistan, displacing the ailing Indo-Greek kings. Now we'll talk about the Parthian kingdom. Parthia was one of the ancient land corresponding roughly to the modern region of Khorassan in Iran. The term is also used in the reference to Parthian Empire, which was existed between 247 BC to 224 AD. The first certain occurrence of the name of the Parvata, the Bestun inscription in 520 BC, and the Achaemenid king Darius I, but Parvata may only a dialect variation of the name of Parsa, that is called Persian. One name, that of Mender, stand out conspicuously amid to the crowd of obscure princes. He seems to have belonged to the family of 𝗂𝗂𝗍𝗂𝗍 and have had his capital in Kabul when he issued in 155 BC to make a bold invasion in India described in his last chapter. 2 years later, he was obliged to retire and devote his energies and encounter with the dangerous which menaced him at home due to the never-ending quarrels with his neighbors on the frontiers. So let's talk about the Kushan. In the early 2nd century BC, a tribe of the Central Asian frontier of China called as 𝗤𝗂𝗍 defeated the neighboring one as the 𝗤𝗂𝗍. After more conflict, the survivors of 𝗤𝗂𝗍 were dislocated west, passing down the 𝗤𝗂𝗍𝗄 river valley and along the southern shore of the lake 𝗤𝗂𝗂𝗀. This movement also pushed the Sakas tribe ahead of them. Sometime between 145 to 125 BC, these nomad invaders burst into the Bactria and the Parthia. A generation later, they were pressing into Kabul Valley and onto the Punjab plains. At around the beginning of the Christian era, one of the fifth 𝗤𝗂𝗍𝗂 attacked and defeated others, leaving his clan in control. Kushan or Kushan. 𝗂𝗂𝗍𝗂𝗪 established Kushan Dynasty in 78 AD by taking advantage of disunion of existing dynasty of Pallava Parthian and the 𝗪𝗂𝗄𝗏 Parthians, and gradually wrested control of the southern prosperous region, which is the northwest part of ancient India, traditionally known as Gandhara. The Kushan king introduced gold, copper coins, of which large number have survived. It was the Kushan emperor 𝗵𝗂𝗶𝗄𝗏 introduced the first gold coin in India. Ample evidence of trade with China, Central Asia, Egypt, Rome were available, which made their economy very strong and the kingdom wealthy and prosperous. Under Kanishka I and his successor, the Kushan kingdom reached its height. It was acknowledged that as one of the four greatest Eurasian powers of its time. The Kushan were instrumental in spreading Buddhism in Central Asia and China and developing Mahayana Buddhism and Gandhara and the Mathura school of art. The Kushan became affluent through trade, particularly with Rome, as large issues of gold coins shows. These coins, which exhibit the figures of Greek, Roman, Iranian, Hindu, Buddhist deities and bear inscription in adapted Greek letters, are witness and toleration of the Scythian as a religion and art that prevailed in the Kushan Empire. The Kushan Empire had started decline soon after Vasudeva's death. Vasudeva was followed by his son Kanishka II, who lost all the territories west of the river of Indus. Vasudeva II, Vanishka, and Shaka are the king who followed after the Kanishka II. After the Vanishka, the Kushan Empire completely disintegrated into a small kingdom. By the 4th century AD, the dynasty went into total obscurity with the advent of mighty Gupta emperors. So that was all about this video. Follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and visit our website for latest updates.